Good morning. I'm Reverend Michelle Scott-Huffman. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the minister here at First UU. I'm a middle-aged, middle height, middle everything maybe, I don't know, woman with spiky dark hair and often pale skin. My mother has told me for 30 years, "Are you okay? You look pale." And I keep saying, when are you going to stop saying that? So, I'm glad to be here with you this morning, glad to be here in this first Sunday of February when we shift our focus from the January theme of finding our center to the February theme of love, and just glad to be a part of this community. Love is the most important thing in our lives, a passion for which we would fight or die, and yet we're reluctant to linger over its names. Without a supple vocabulary, we can't even talk or think about it directly. These are the words of Diane Ackerman, author of A Natural History of Love. And they are the epigraph that begins the first chapter of Bell Hook's classic book, All About Love. Love is, perhaps appropriately or perhaps tritely, I can never decide, our Soul Matters theme for the month of February. I suppose whether it's appropriate or trite depends upon ultimately what we do with it. Some might prefer to keep our conversation at the Hallmark, florist, and Valentine's Day dinner level, thinking of love only in the romantic sense and as something that figures prominently into our lives, but with a relatively small number of people that we love in the romantic sense. On the other hand, when we think about all the other ways that a conversation about love can inform, inspire, and challenge not just our words, but our actions with and toward others, well, now that's a conversation that can get us somewhere. Because the truth is that even if the relationships in our lives that we most need to focus on are the familial and or romantic, in order to do them justice, we must come to a deeper understanding of love as something that will constantly require something of us. Some of my friends who have deconstructed fundamentalist Christianity in their lives and who have been brave enough to return to Scripture as a sacred source in their lives have been able to do so by substituting the word love for references to the divine in the text. The substitution makes for some powerful reading. But one of the most powerful passages to me comes from the Hebrew prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8, where it would read, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does love require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with love." What does love require of you? Justice, kindness, and humility are a pretty good start. In the back cover review of Bell Hook's book, All About Love, Gloria Steinem refers to love as the most sought after and least examined emotion. I would tend to agree with that assessment of love understood simply as emotion, but I think it also falls short by not also naming love as something more than emotion. It is so much more, and thus requires more than an emotional engagement. In their charge to the Article 2 Study Commission, the UUA Board of Trustees named love as a core theological value that is shared widely among UUs. In fact, the Commission on Appraisal in its report, Engaging Our Theological Diversity, cites Robert Miller's study of Unitarian Universalism, stating, UUs ranked loving as an instrumental value and mature love as a terminal value more highly than did respondents from other groups, religious and non-religious. They go on to say our commitment to personal, institutional, and cultural change rooted in anti-oppression, anti-racism, and multiculturalism values and practices is love in action. And they write, we therefore charge this commission to root its work in love as a principal guide in its work, attending particularly to the ways that we and all of our root traditions have understood and articulated love, and how we have acted out of love. Well, that should be easy, right? As it turns out, we aren't all always talking about the same thing when we talk about love. It's difficult to find an agreed upon definition and that goes deeper than romance and happily ever after. To quote The Princess Bride, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." In fact, some folks engage in acts that are anything but love and then cloak them in the language of love, leading to further confusion and confounding around the true meaning of love. Who is capable of it? Who is worthy of it? What does it look like or feel like? How does one learn about it? And can the source of that learning be trusted? Can it be lost? Can it be found? Are there guarantees? Is it worth the risk? What is the cost? And again, what does it require of me? What does it require of us? I took some of my questions about love and turned to the late Bell Hooks in her classic book, All About Love, which I happen to be carrying with me, where she seeks, among other things, to give love words. Lamenting the difficulty in finding a shared language for love that takes it seriously, Hooks finds most convincing M. Scott Peck's definition, following Erich Fromm, in the 1978 book, The Road Less Traveled, which is simply the will to extend oneself with the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Now, spiritual in this use refers to the dimension of our core reality where body, mind, and spirit are one. About the usefulness of Peck's definition, Hooks writes, when we intervene on mystifying assumptions that love cannot be defined by offering workable, useful definitions, we are already creating a context where love can begin to flourish. To begin by always thinking of love as an action rather than a feeling is one way in which anyone using the word in this manner automatically assumes accountability and responsibility. We are often taught that we have no control over our feelings, yet most of us accept that we choose our actions, that intention and will inform what we do. If we were constantly remembering that love is as love does, we would not use the word in a manner that devalues and degrades its meaning. When we are loving, we openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust. Accountability, care, affection, responsibility, respect, commitment, and trust are probably many of the ingredients that make what the Hebrew prophet Micah called justice, kindness, mercy in many translations, and humility. I bring us back to that only to lift up the Hebrew word that gets translated both kindness and mercy, chesed, which has been defined as covenant faithfulness. Those are familiar words to us, as you use. Language that is important to us as we imagine the ways that we are faithful to one another in covenant community so that we can be empowered to transform ourselves and the world around us. Covenant faithfulness and justice. Cornel West has said, justice is what love looks like in public. And we can do none of that without exercising humility in our lives and in our interactions with others. You see, I believe it is humility that allows us to move past our prideful stance that I can't love someone who didn't love me first or who doesn't love me back. Let me be clear that I'm not talking here about continually subjecting ourselves to toxic relationships or staying in situations where we are unsafe. I am not referring to that right now at all. I'm talking about the attitude that if I don't know someone and haven't formed a relationship with them, that they somehow don't deserve my respect because they haven't earned it. And that I'm accountable to no one. And that I can't live a life where love is my default, whether or not it has been earned. I think it is humility that takes us out of that prideful place, that allows us to love just for the sake of loving and not for what we get in return, that allows us to love a stranger who we may never see again, who we may never see the results of our loving action, but just to know that we have done the thing that we are able to do to put love into the world. One of the most impactful pieces that I've ever read is from what's been called Thomas Merton's mystical vision in Louisville. Thomas Merton is a Trappist monk. And he writes, in Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another, even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world. The sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being a man, a member of a race in which God himself became incarnate, as if the shadows and stupidities of the human condition could overwhelm me. Now I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. Then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach, the core of their reality. We might call that the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The person that each one is in God's eyes. If they could all see themselves as they really are, if only we could see each other that way all the time, there would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. But this cannot be seen, only believed and understood by a peculiar gift. What if we practiced that kind of love? A love that has us looking at perfect strangers as if they are walking around shining like the sun. What if we began by looking at and treating ourselves that way? And then the others in our immediate circles, the ones with whom we are already trying to practice love. And then what if we turned it outward? And just started, as I think we'll hear Jessica Wurgis say next week, to love the hell out of the world. So here's what I want to offer. As a way of starting our conversation about love this month, in the popular words of the Facebook relationship status, it's complicated, but it's not out of reach. I've noticed recently in a number of conversations about UU values and our mission as a church and topics like covenant and accountability that we are lacking a shared language. In many cases, our hearts are in the same place, but a word gets used that has a negative connotation for some of us and a positive connotation for others and no real meaning for some. So I wonder if it's possible for us to come out of this month with a powerful shared vocabulary that allows us to talk about the ways that love is a guiding principle and a theological value for us. Maybe some folks would like to join me in reading or rereading this book, all about love, and having some conversations about what we find there. Maybe we can practice standing before mirrors and sitting across the table from people that we know and sitting on street corners, observing a bunch of strangers and allowing ourselves to let love well up inside us. Because love is not all flowers and Hallmark cards. It's a moment-by-moment choice. It's hard work. It's risky. And it's necessary for us to be good humans together in this world and to realize our own aspirations of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, our second UU principle, that uplifts the inherent worth and dignity in every person, our first UU principle. I'll close with a quote from Reverend Darcy Lane. Our main job, both as a universalist community and as individual persons, is to remember love whenever we can, whenever it is available to be remembered or experienced, and to remind one another when we have forgotten. We remind each other not by a logical argument, but by being love, by embodying and manifesting love, by grounding our actions, our choices, our words in that bedrock of love that underlays and supports everything that is deeper than the suffering and the struggle of this moment, of any moment. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.